All right, well,
Hi,
we're gonna get
Brenda,
started.
how are you? I'm good.
So, we're gonna talk today on needs analysis. So, but, what I want you to start with though is let's assume that you met someone and you've set an appointment with them. They've come to the office now, or you're meeting them somewhere, whatever it is. And for the sake of what we're going to talk on today, let's assume it's a buyer, okay? A buyer of a house. And what I want you to do is write down the 3 questions. Well, you may ask more than this for sure, but write down just 2 or 3 questions that you would ask them that would help you to know what they want to buy in a home. Okay, so write down, and we're not going to talk about those right now, but we'll come back to them later.
To buy, you said.
So yeah, so write down 2 or 3 questions that you would ask somebody when you sit down with a buyer that would help you to know what they're looking for in a home.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
And-
Don't share those now.
Yeah, don't share them now, and we'll come back to them later on.
They're secrets.
And the reason I have you do it now is because what we're going to then talk about today, some of those questions may change. And so when we get to that point, I want to go back to, I don't want you to change them later in that when we do that part of it. Okay. All right. Now, top 3 complaints about real estate agents. What do you think they are?
Communication.
Okay, good. All 3 of them actually are about communication, so a little more specific, but you're right on. They are.
Never answer this one.
Okay, so yeah, number 1 is that we don't return calls or answer the phone, like you said, yeah.
It just blows my mind.
But yeah, it's
It
crazy
blows my mind when people thank me
for answering.
for
Yeah,
answering. Thank you so much for calling me back.
yeah, yeah. So that's number 1. Number 2, any other ideas of it's all communications related, but
Yeah,
so number 2
they
is that
don't listen to me.
good is that we don't listen.
Don't listen to me.
Yep.
And they don't listen to me, and they're doing things I don't want them to do, or
So now
they're
this
not
one,
doing anything.
this one is related to that. You guys will probably disagree with me, but this is what they say about us is that we waste their
Time,
time.
waste their time.
Yep. But those are the top 3 complaints about real estate agents. Now, we're going to talk about those. This really is the whole premise of what we're going to talk about. Not number 1, not so much. That one is just call people back. But we're going to talk about why is it? Because typically what will happen is in real estate, there's a term that if you have not heard it yet, you will hear it, or maybe say it if you haven't said it. But I'm sure Brenda Lee will have heard it. I'm not sure if you guys will have yet. But have you heard the term buyers are liars?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, though, is that is not actually true. I do not believe that buyers are liars. What the problem is, and remember, for me, I bring this up a lot. For me, one of the beliefs that I have is that power comes out of telling the truth. So there is power in telling the truth. And so because of that, I believe that when we say buyers are liars, really, if we were to tell the truth on that, it usually is going to boil down to that most of the time it's I didn't communicate in such a way to understand what they meant. And I'll show you what I mean as we go through this. But just keep in mind that the term buyers are liars or sellers or storytellers, whatever, I actually don't think that's true. It's just you and I have not been taught to communicate very well. And in fact, the way we've been taught to communicate actually creates the scenario that we then believe buyers are liars, but it's actually not true. Okay. So keep in mind the premise of this, that part of the problem of where buyers are liars come from is because they feel like we didn't listen to them. And then we went out and showed them properties that they feel like were a waste of their time. When in actuality, we actually were going out and showing them exactly what they said that they wanted. But where we're headed is just because that's what they said they wanted isn't necessarily true. So now let me ask you another question. And how would you respond to this? Nobody buys anything they don't need.
That is so false.
Okay, I have one false. Any other thoughts? Nobody buys anything they don't need. Do you agree or
It's
disagree?
false. It's false.
I agree with that.
You agree with it?
No, I agree that it's false.
Okay, so
I agree.
So give me an example of something that you bought. That, oh, actually, let me pause real quick. So for you guys on Zoom, if you'll throw in the chat box, just a first and last name so that I have a record from the class, would be great. So give me an example then of something that either you or somebody you know bought that they don't need.
A boat.
A boat.
I bought a bedspread yesterday. I do not need,
Okay,
but I wanted it
okay, good.
and I have it.
So tell me about the boat.
It's pure entertainment and enjoyment. It's
But-
not,
So, and who bought it? You?
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm pretending.
oh,
That if I bought something that I didn't.
well,
need-
yeah, no, I just want to make examples of, so, yeah, something that you,
Well, I just mean a boat in general is something people don't need.
okay. Okay, got you.
I bought a foot massager that is collecting dust and I haven't used as much.
Okay. Okay,
I
so,
need that though. So
Yeah,
so you bought a foot massager that you don't need.
I mean.
See, I was hoping that you had the boat, because this would be great as you use the
I
boat.
would have a boat too.
I need,
You need it.
I need the boat.
Okay, so foot
You could
massager,
live
you bought
without
one,
a
but you
boat.
don't need it.
I
could
mean,
live
I'm
without
not
the
using it, I am not using it as much as I thought. I thought I needed it,
Okay,
but for what I see is happening, I'm thinking you didn't need as much as you thought you did.
okay, so. So do you need it or do you not need it?
I would say no.
Okay, good. Will you bring it and give it to me?
Well, I paid $150, right?
Yeah, but you don't need it. Nobody buys anything they don't need, and you said you don't need it.
So you want my fake boat?
Yeah, I know. That's why I wanted you to have a real boat. I was gonna be like, sweet, this is my favorite part of the class. So will you bring the foot massager? Give it to me.
Sure, if you pay me. What I
No,
pay
no,
for it.
no, I'm not gonna, no, I'm not gonna. Pay
Well,
you.
then I'll keep it because I might still use.
Okay, so wait, so now it starts to sound like maybe you do need it then.
Well, it's one thing that is not something that I know I'm using every day, so that's why I say. Don't need it.
Okay, so here's where I'm going with this. There are two types of needs. So for your notes, this would be a good spot to write down. There are two types of needs. When I said nobody buys anything they don't need, you guys went to this spot of, and a part of what we're going to talk about today has its roots in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he said basically we all have these physiological needs. We need food, shelter, clothes, those type of things. And so those are real needs that we have to have, right? Outside of that, really everything else that's out there is more of a perceived need. So there are real needs and there are perceived needs. So when I said to you, nobody buys anything they don't need, what I'm referring to is and Brenda Lee she said it as her bedspread is I want it, but I don't need it. Well, what I'm saying to you is the want part of you is a perceived need. It's not a real need, but so there is some type of a need to getting it. So going back to the foot massager is you have some need to buy that. That's not a real need, meaning it's not, you're not going to die if you don't have that foot massager, but you had something inside of you that needed that. And therefore you went and made the purchase. So part of just kind of keep in mind, that's where we're going. And this has what we're going to talk about today has its roots in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's not exactly the same thing, but it's the same concept of what Abraham Maslow said is that once one of these lower needs is met, we will then pursue after the next need. So once we have food, shelter, clothes, all that kind of stuff, then the next thing on our list is going to be safety. We want to be safe. And the proof of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that way is if you're starving, you would go put your safety at risk to go get food because that's a higher need. So keep in mind, that's what we're talking about here. When I say nobody buys anything they don't need, keep in mind what I'm referring to is that it could be a perceived need. They have something going on inside of them that needs that foot massager. And it could quite possibly be even just the fact of I'm able to go buy this, therefore maybe the purchase of it actually meets the need. It might not be the thing itself. It might be just the fact that you purchased it or could purchase it satisfies that need. You following what I'm saying?
Like a hoard.
Yeah, hoarder would be another example of that, is they have some need inside of them that in order to meet that, they can't ever get rid of anything. That would be some type of there's a need. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily right or logical, but we have these needs that cause us to do things. Okay, so that's the first piece as we go through this.
Sorry, Russ.
Yeah.
As if, from what you're saying, aside from food, shelter and clothes, really anything and everything else is a perceived need.
Essentially, yeah. Everything else that we are like, you think about the cars. So Brenda Lee, I know, drives a Mercedes, right?
I do.
Does she need a Mercedes?
No.
But she might,
Maybe.
she might need one, but she doesn't, that's not a real need. That would be a perceived need, meaning could she get where she needs to go and do what she needs to do in a
Corolla.
Toyota Corolla?
That doesn't sound.
I would be in my Chrysler 300. My son works for a Mercedes place. It's like, Mom, I found your car. You have to have it. You need this car.
That's right.
I'm like, oh, I like my Chrysler.
But if you stop and think about it, every one of us, like we could all be driving the exact same cheapest car out there, but we don't. And why do we not? Is because we have these perceived needs that we want to meet. Now, part of why I'm saying that is because we have to keep that in mind as we work with our buyers and sellers, is some of the things that we think might not be logical for them to do or make sense, they may do because of some perceived need that they have.
So do you think the need is in the eye of the beholder?
For sure. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so that's the first piece. The next part of this, we're gonna be talking a lot about communication, okay? The next piece of this is the challenge that we have in real estate and just life, actually, in just life that we have in communication is that we tend to communicate one thing, but we actually mean something else. So when we are talking to anybody, we sometimes will say one thing, but we actually mean something different, okay? So let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So let's say, for example, I had you guys write down some questions you would ask if a buyer had come in. So let's assume now that I am the buyer of a home. I've come in to meet with you. I want to buy a house. I've come in to meet with you. We sit down to talk about it. And you've asked me whatever questions you've written down, which we're not going to go into those just yet, but you've asked me whatever questions. And at the end of our conversation, here's what we land on. I want to buy a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Okay. So now that I've told you that's what I want, is I want to get a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. What are you now going to go and show me? What proper, and I don't need specifics, but just in general, what are you going to go show me?
House on the hill.
Homes that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights, right? Because that's what I said that I want, okay? Now, part of what goes on is this, is you then go out and start to show me properties. We go out and look at homes that are high on a hill with a view of the city lights, and I don't buy. I say, yeah, I'm not really interested in this house. So you take me to another one. It's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Yeah, I don't really like this one. So you take me to another one. Yeah, I don't really like that one either. So what would you do?
Go back to the needs.
Okay, good. That's what you should do.
Talk
But-
again.
But let's say that I keep saying, well, I want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights.
Keep
Drive
finding
further
more homes.
up the mountain.
Different
Okay,
homes.
so you're gonna go find more houses that are higher in the hill with a view of the city lights, right? Now, What happens though is this, so before that, let me ask you this, and you know, and you guys on Zoom can unmute and participate as well. You be that buyer for a minute. You want to get a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights. What would you want that home for? So why would you want a home that's high on a hill with a view of the city lights? And if you don't want one, if you're like, well, I wouldn't want one, then just tell me why you think somebody would want.
Nice neighborhood in the view.
Prestige.
Okay, nice neighborhood in the view, prestige. So go to the nice neighborhood with a view. What about it? Why is that important?
Well, usually people are looking for something a little beyond where they're at. And so there's a perceived what living on the hill looks like. And that's, I think, more what they're looking for than the house or location itself, is that feeling of being high on a hill with a view.
Okay, so would you say that's the same as what Brenda Lee said then, prestige? Is that what you mean by it? And it's okay if you don't, I just want to.
Not necessarily. I think it's more of that feeling of peace, or, well, I guess when I think prestige, I think, outdoing the Joneses. I think it's more of an internal peace, I've arrived thing.
Okay, so for you, it'd be more of an esteem type of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, good. What about the rest of you? What would be some other reasons somebody would want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights?
August is pretty, I just want the view. It might not be in the.
Okay, but what about the view? So I'm good with that. They want the view, but for what reason? Like, what's it gonna do for you?
Give me a sense of safety,
Of safety, okay, good.
because if something happens, a flood or something, I'm higher.
Okay,
Just be able to look at something beautiful every day,
okay, and what would that do for you?
just internally get my warm and fuzzies going.
Okay, so essentially, the word I like to use for that, to describe that, would be comfort.
Yeah.
Meaning a kind of just, I can go out and just be at peace. Okay, good.
I had one high on the hill because she had to get out of the inversion. She couldn't breathe. She
Okay,
had
good.
asthma.
So health could be for a health reason. Good. What else? What would be some other reasons?
They like the outdoors.
Okay,
They like to have access to the mountains.
perfect. Okay, good. Awesome. Any other thoughts?
They like shoveling
They
snow.
grew up in Chicago.
No.
They wanna go back to the childhood.
Okay, they want to go back to the childhood. Good. Okay, so now you've been out showing me these homes high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Keep in mind all the stuff you've talked about of that's the reason I want that. Okay. So now I then call you up on the phone one day and say, hey, I've got a property that I've just been online searching your website and came across this property that I really like and I want to go see it. So I give you the address, or I give you the MLS number, you sit down, you pull it up on the MLS. And the first thing you notice is that it's not high on a hill with the view of the city lights. Instead, it's in a canyon, tucked away, surrounded by nothing but trees. So now the question for you is that what I originally wanted?
No,
Okay, so here's no's and then a maybe.
they don't know what they want.
I don't know, or they don't. What did you say?
I think buyers don't know what they want, but when they see it, they'll feel it.
Okay, good, perfect, which I want to talk about that in a second too. So what I'm saying to you is that what they originally wanted was not the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, even though that's what they said. What they really wanted was, could I get prestige from a home tucked away in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees? Could I get that feeling of peace or whatever, that the comfort I was talking about from a home in a canyon surrounded by nothing but trees, where, or even using what you were saying, they like the outdoors. Could I get that from the home in the canyon? What about safety?
That's debatable.
Well, so it does depend. Now, if what they were wanting was like the safety, meaning peace of mind of that if there's flooding, it's not going to get me, that might not happen in the canyon.
Yeah.
But what if it was the privacy of, I don't want my neighbors looking into my house of what I'm doing or whatever.
Well, the way I was thinking is, I'm kind of alone in here and a stranger can jump in here and invite himself in.
Yeah.
So that's why I said the safety, that's debatable.
Yeah, and that's just it. So it depends. But so here's the key thing. What I'm wanting you guys to see from this is notice that what they said they want might not be what they meant that they want. So that's why when I say to you, buyers aren't liars, they're just, we typically don't ask enough questions to have them tell us. Meaning that if they just say they want a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, unless we find out why they want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, we get stuck with going and showing only homes high on a hill with a view of the city lights. Then when they call and say they want to buy the home in the canyon surrounded by nothing but trees, we feel like, well, buyers are liars. They told me they wanted a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights. But in actuality, they wanted the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights because of the prestige that it would give to them. And if they find another property that would meet that need, because really that's what we're talking about. That's the whole idea of this premise of this class is a needs analysis, is once you know what their true actual need is, there are many ways that it could potentially be met. Now, not always, because of, like you said, if you're worried about somebody breaking into your house, you might not want to be in the canyon surrounded by nothing but trees, because that might make it easier for them.
Yeah.
But if what they're looking for is prestige, or they want to be in the outdoors, if what their core need really is can be met in a different property than what they told you, they'll do it. And part of why people tell us what they tell us is because that's the way they relate to it. They might not know that something else exists to meet that need. So at the end of the day, all of this really, what we're talking about is a way for them to meet their need.
So what kind of questions are going to help us really find the need and not what they think they want?
That's a great question, and we're going to talk about that as soon as I throw away this pen.
What's important to have the house on the hill with the lights?
Does it need to be seen by all the slums living below you?
Exactly.
That
All
could
right.
be seen by- Like
So-
the Larry H. Miller one.
We're going to answer that question, but first, we're going to answer that question, but first I'm going to take a long time to do it. Here's the thing. So here's part of what we need to understand is the way, think of this as being your brain. And 10% of who you are is conscious. Okay, so 10% of our personality is conscious. 90% is unconscious. And so what that means is this. This part of our brain is where all the logic is. This is where things are logical, things are reasonable, things are rational. All of that kind of stuff takes place in the 10%. Down here in the 90% is where things are illogical, unreasonable. All of those type of things take place down here. Now, you guys are aware of this already, but when it comes to purchasing a home, it is an emotional purchase. And so because of that, and Brenda Lee already brought up that and for you guys that are somewhat newer, if you have not heard this before, you will from a buyer, is I don't know how to explain what I'm looking for, but I'll know it when I see it, right? When they say that, when somebody says, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it, the reason they're saying that is because the information of what they're looking for is stored down here in the unconscious part of the brain. So that's why they say to you, I know what it is, but I don't know how to explain it. What they're saying is, I don't know how to bring it up here into the conscious part of the brain to be able to explain to you in a logical way what I'm looking for. So what they do is they do the very best they can to explain that in a logical way, because that's the way that you and I work. I mean, could you imagine somebody showing up and saying to you, so Brenda Lee, I'd like to buy a house that's going to give me this sense of prestige. Yeah, you'd be like, what? Okay. Unfortunately, on the MLS, we don't have a box we can go check to say prestige is what they're looking for. Now,
They
Just
have
says a
it.
million.
Yeah, the thing is now, that's
or
what-
two. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Now, let me show you how this complicates it and where this whole thing, remember what we're talking about is that they have the experience that we don't listen and we waste their time. Now, so let me show you where that comes from. Is what happens is this. So 10% of who you are is conscious and 90% of who you are is unconscious. Same as with our client. So they have this, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it here. They do the best they can to bring it up to here to then communicate it over to you here. You then receive this communication at this conscious level. You interpret what it means to you down into what it would mean for you in the unconscious. And then what happens is this. In fact, let me ask this question, and I should have asked this before. I just realized I didn't. But is it okay to let them buy the house that they want? Not the one you think they should buy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we always say yes to that. But what I'm telling you is where this comes from, that we didn't listen and we waste their time. Where that complaint comes from is because they have this, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll know it when I see it thing. They do as best as they can to explain it. We then hear what it is that they want, but then we interpret it as to why we would want that. We take what they said they wanted in a home and we plug it into why we would want that house. Meaning, if they said they want the home high on a hill with a view of the city lights, if I said that, then you're going to relate to it as in terms of why you would want it. And you're going to think about why you would want that house, and you're going to then interact with them around why you would want the house, not why they would want the house, unless we figure out why they want it and let them buy the house they want, not the one we think they should have. Does that make sense? So if you're worried about safety of that and they want prestige, and you go show the house to them and you're high on the hill with the view of the city lights, if for you, the home high on the hill with the view of the city lights is about the safety, you're going to talk about the house that way. You'll be at the house and be like, well, yo, look, this would be so safe. Like, you don't have to worry about that. And in their mind, they're like, why does she keep talking about the safety? I don't really care. I'm not scared of somebody breaking into my house. But we talk about it in terms of why it's important to us rather than them. Does this make sense what I'm saying so far? Are you clear? Okay. So now how do we avoid all of this from happening? Well, how we avoid it from happening is we first have to find out when they start telling us at this logical level, we then have to find out we have to dig down into this to figure out, so what is the need? See, because the thing driving the purchase, nobody buys anything they don't need. So what's driving their purchase is going to be some need. And that need that they have that's driving this purchase might not be reasonable, logical. For you, it might be like, I don't know why you would do that. But for them, there's some need that's driving it. And our job is to figure out what that need is. Once you figure out what that need is, that now empowers them to buy. Because here's the thing. So let me show you the next step of this. So we talked about 10% of who you are is conscious and 90% is unconscious. So in the unconscious, what happens is this. So the way that your brain stores information is like this. It takes, I went blank for a second there. I'm like, what am I supposed to write here? Okay, so what happens is this. Your brain stores information in 3 discrete locations. So it puts the pictures in one area, it puts the decisions you have in another area, and then it has the feelings stored in another area. So the idea of this is this. Think of it this way. When you have an experience, your brain then takes that experience and it's going to compartmentalize the experience. It's going to take the pictures and store them in one area. It's going to put the decisions in another area, and it's going to take the feelings and store them in another area. And here's the point of this. When you've had something, some type of an experience, it could be good, could be a bad, doesn't matter. But the reason we're typically not walking around all day crying is because our brain helps us deal with this, or overjoyed, could be the same thing, I guess, is your brain takes that experience and it's going to compartmentalize, puts the pictures in one area, decisions in another, and the feelings in another. But if I were to have you, if I had you, and sometimes I'll do this in a class, but if I had you come up here and tell me about a time when you were scared to death, like you really, truly thought you were going to die, You have one? Is that why you're saying?
Oh, yes, I have one,
Okay, do you want to tell us about it?
sure.
Well, come up here so that people online can see us too, if that's all right.
Oh,
You gotta see your great.
I know, she might actually.
no, well, I have one when I been robbed at gunpoint.
Perfect. This is a good one. Okay, you've been robbed at gunpoint
Oh,
too?
yeah.
And I,
Wonderful.
Wait, were you at DR?
In Paraguay.
Oh, okay.
well, I was here in the not Cottonwood, Murray. So.
Okay, so
here-
hang on one sec, before
Yeah.
you start to talk about, it. So part of what I'm gonna talk to you guys, and what I'm showing you right now, what we're gonna demonstrate. Is what happens when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings come back together, okay? So what I'm gonna do is show you what this looks like, so pay attention, and don't you worry about what I'm about to say,
Okay.
but really pay attention to. In fact, actually, I'm just gonna say it this way, because I don't want to influence you. Pay attention to her body language.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll talk about it after. So now, are you, first off, are you okay talking about this
Sure,
and sharing it with us? Okay, now, I actually might have you tell parts of a story and then go, oh, wait, go back and tell that again. Because
Okay.
I'm gonna demonstrate something for these guys. So, okay, so go ahead and start. Pick up kind of the beginning and tell us.
so well,
about
it
what-
was it was Saturday, the Saturday before Father's Day. So I was very late at night, my kids were small. So I wait for my husband to be home. Because I wanted to go buy him a card and I guess a treat, something. And so I left him with the children and I went to Smith's on 45th South. So we're talking east, it's not a bad area. I went to the store and I had cash, I was paying with cash, and I suppose somebody saw me having cash. And back then I didn't know any better that when I went home to look at lights that were following me constantly. Now I am aware of that and now I do it. If I'm not sure, I will take a loop I don't need to take to see if that person is going to go. But before I didn't, so I went straight home. And we were renting an apartment and they didn't have sensor lights or anything. So the driveway was very dark. So I parked my car and my husband saw me, so he came. So he grabbed some bags to take inside and I stayed behind to take the last ones. My husband was just gone when I felt somebody behind me and I was thinking, that's strange. He's just gone, he came that fast. When I heard that voice that said to me, don't move, don't scream, don't do anything or I'll blow you away. And I had the gun muzzle right here by my ribs. And it was very like surreal, I would say, because this guy is robbing me and I can see my neighbor across the street watching TV and his big window open. And I was thinking if he just knew what was happening.
Mhm.
So when that's happening, my husband thinking, well, why is she not coming? Oh, and then he says to me, give me your money, your checks, your whatever you have. And I was like so frozen, forgot I had the cash. So I just gave him whatever, but my husband was coming. So when he saw my husband was coming, he ran. And my husband came and he says, what's going on? Who's that? And I said to him, don't say anything. Go inside because that guy has a gun and we don't. So we went inside and I was so scared, I didn't know what to do. And I called my mother-in-law. And then she says, hang up right now and call police. So we call police, the police come, they bring some dogs and they follow the trails just so far, I guess, until he jumped in his car and left. And so to me, that is very important. If you notice when we were talking about house, what did I say?
Safety, yeah.
Safety.
Okay, so let's go back though. So take me to, tell me. So picture, go back in your mind to that and go to right before you were scared to go to the moment where you were like, oh, I might die.
Well,
So retell that part.
yeah, well, this is kind of interesting because at the beginning I was surprised, scared, but as the seconds were going, I was getting upset. I was to the point that I was thinking, I want to grab the the gun out of the hands of this loser. Well, I mean, I was getting upset. I was getting angry
Okay, but go back to the point before,
because that,
take me right, go back to just a little bit before, tell me what was happening, and then when you were like scared, like you thought you were gonna die.
well, at the beginning, right there when he spoke, when
Okay,
I did.
so go back and start right there.
Uh-huh.
So your husband just left and went inside, you're grabbing some more, and so start right there, tell me, and then
Oh.
take me right up to that moment.
Well, I was just behind, bending to the trunk of my car when I hear this voice talking to me. Don't scream, don't move, don't do anything, or I'll blow you away.
And what were you feeling right at that moment?
Scared, surprised. Surprised more than anything. I guess surprise is the first word before I knew I needed to be scared.
Okay,
What's going on?
so I'm gonna do it one more time. So
Uh-huh.
go back. Take me right up to that point again. So just tell me the story again and really watch the body language. Okay,
Okay. Well, then I was in the dark driveway.
Yeah.
Leaning on the trunk of my car when I hear this voice. That is speaking to me, a voice I wasn't expecting. Don't scream, don't cry, don't do anything. Don't move because I'll blow you away.
and what were you feeling right at that moment?
Like I said, first thing I felt was surprise. Before, because my brain didn't know what was happening, like, oh, you have a gun, okay, that means I need to feel scared now.
Yeah.
You know, at the beginning, you are choosing what your emotion is going to
So,
be.
so now here's the question I have for you. As you're retelling that,
Mhm.
what do you feel inside right now?
Every time I say it, I feel less worried, less scared, or
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, less.
But so the first time I had you come up and start telling it, what did you feel inside?
I guess sadness, I guess frustration.
I mean,
don't know.
could you feel those same feelings still that you were having that day? Or no?
As time goes by, I think they are washing off.
They're well, okay. Okay, good. Okay, cool, thanks. Now, so what did you guys notice on her body language? Because there's a few things that I want to,
Her eyes got really big.
yeah.
She
More
was
time
like,
she told the story.
Yeah, and the other thing too, which sometimes when I do this, I'll have the person leave the room so that I can tell you specifically what to watch for. And not everybody does this the same way. So you have to kind of watch the person, but for her, what happens is this, when the pictures, the decisions and the feelings all reintegrate is a term that we call crystallization.
I love that.
Crystallization is the moment when the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings all come back together again. Now, typically when people crystallize, for her, she's going to do it the same way every time. All of us are going to have slightly different, but for her, what she did, every time she would crystallize, her eyes would go like that. She would look off to the side. But here's the other thing. As you start to get people to get the pictures and the decisions, which then brings the feelings, they'll usually start by just talking. But then if you noticed, the other thing that happened with her body language is she started to actually picture it in her mind. Because did you notice she like even bent over to get the stuff out of the car? See, that's what's happening when you're doing, when the pictures, the decisions and the feelings are coming back together again, that they're actually reliving it in their mind, which is what causes then this crystallization to occur. Now, here, the whole point of what we're talking about today is when you're working with a buyer or a seller, you're ultimately trying to get them to crystallize. Because once they crystallize, then they are empowered to purchase or to sell, either way, buy or sell, but they're empowered once they crystallize. So for example, with Luz, see, let's say that she had shown up and telling us what she wanted to buy in a house was a home that was high on a hill of view of the city lights. What she really wants, which she already told us this and she understood it, but if she had taken us through that example that we just talked about, I now know I have to find out for her what is going to give her, what's going to meet that need for her to be able, that she's crystallized on, to feel safe at her house. Because here's what I'll tell you. she could tell you she wants a home high on a hill with a view of the city lights and it has to be this color and that color and it's got to have this big of rooms. Like you could find every single thing that she talked about that she wants in the features of the house. But she will not buy it if she's not going to feel safe. Is that true? So here's another way of thinking about this. Is people are going to tell you the features that they want in a home. But people don't buy the features. They're buying actually the benefits that go with that feature. So people will show up and tell you what they're looking for in terms of features, but it's not the feature they want. It's actually the benefit is what it is that they're looking for, is they're looking to buy the benefit, not the feature. So they show up telling you the features that they want, but the feature is just a way to meet the benefit. Once we figure out what the benefit is, it makes finding the feature actually easier. It's a little bit counterintuitive, meaning you might think, after I go through and explain some of this of how we go do this process, you might think, well, that means everybody's going to have to go out and build a home because you're never going to get the detail that they're going to give me. But in actuality, once they land on what the benefit is, then now when I go out and show the properties to somebody like that, I go out and I talk about the benefit, not the feature. And I want to talk about the benefit to them, not what I would perceive the benefit to be. See, Luz, based on what you just told us, my guess would be when you go out and show properties to people, you end up talking a lot about safety type things.
Probably.
I would just guess that's going to be the case because in your mind, you're thinking, well, these people need to be safe in their house and they need to feel safe because that's what you want in a house. Does that make sense? But we have to be able to stop and say, okay, hold on. I need to find out what their benefit is that they're looking for and allow them to meet the need the way they want to meet the need. Okay.
So in that case, I can run into problems because if I get a client like Brenda is saying that they want the prestige, not necessarily what I feel is important to me, I might end up showing things that they don't want. They are not interested.
See, and yes, but once I know that what you're looking for is the safety of the house, then when I go show you properties, that's what I'm going to talk about is, does this seem like it would meet your need that you're looking for? Now, I might not say the word safety. It depends on how our conversation went, but I would be relating to, does the property meet the need you're looking for? Not, I don't talk about the feature. Focus on the benefit, not the feature. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I was teaching this one time and I had an agent say to me, sitting in the class, she said, well, wait a minute. So you're telling me that, she said, I tell every one of my clients, you should go on and check the sex offender registry for the neighborhood before you buy the house. And she said, it sounds to me like you're telling me that I shouldn't do that because she was, for her, was saying, I would never buy a house without checking the sex offender registry. And I said, well, let me guess, you probably tell every buyer that they should go check the sex offender registry list before they buy the house. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, what if they don't care about that?
I have never told a client that.
Yeah, I never
If
have.
they are concerned, if they talk about schools, I'll say, you need to check that. I am not going to tell them because you just don't know.
Well, what's good for you may not be
Be good for them. And then if they're not worried, now they are.
Now all of a sudden they are.
Now
women.
it's like,
And there's a lot of neighborhoods that have them.
they have.
And you would have never thought about it or heard about it unless you went and looked.
Well, and the other thing that's hard with that, and I don't want to downplay, like
Yeah,
I'm not in favor of like,
No.
go move into next to some guy. Like, I'm not
No,
saying that.
it's not.
But I also know, like, I had a brother-in-law who has now passed away, but he was on the sex offender registry for something that, like, you would not have to worry about your kids living next to it. Like, meaning somebody could end up on the sex offender registry because they had to pee really bad and they just did it in public and got caught. You're on the sex. I mean, do you need to worry about living next to the guy who peed outside? Like, probably not. Now, like I said, I am not trying to downplay,
Right.
like, there are bad people out there. I don't mean that. But again, what I'm saying is, if it's important to them, then you, like you said, if they brought up of like, I want to make sure my kids are safe and stuff, then maybe you would want to do that, but.
So like if you were concerned that someone had passed away in the home as an agent, then you're going to be asking, and then once you know, then you feel like you need to tell them. But I've had buyers that's like, has anyone ever died in this home? I'm like, is that important to you? Yes, I don't ever want to buy a home that anyone has ever died in. I said, okay, then we will ask.
Do you have to disclose that?
If asked, if they ask you, you can't
And
lie.
you know,
Yeah.
so be careful what you ask.
Yeah, I got a great story on that real quick. I'll tell. So I have a neighbor, well, he doesn't live in my
It's
neighborhood anymore,
interesting.
but I had a neighbor that was he's an attorney. And he called me one day and said, hey, I've got some people that the mom and dad died. They need to sell their house. Can you help them? I said, yeah, sure. And he said, you'll just go through me. I'm handling the whole estate. But just send me the paperwork. You'll never deal with the heirs to this property. I was like, that's fine. I can deal with you. He said, great. Go take a look at it. Here's the address. There's a key under the mat, front door. I show up to the house. I go to the front door. I lift up the mat. There's no key. So I'm like, well, maybe there's a mat on the side door or something. So I go to the side door, no mat, no key. Check the back door, nothing. And I'm like, huh. So I leave and I call up my attorney neighbor friend, and his name was John. I call him. I say, hey, John, I went out there, but there wasn't a key. And he's like, oh, I forgot. So-and-so must have taken it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll get you back in there. Well, did the neighbor say anything to you? And I go, no. And he's like, oh, well, he usually comes over and talks to people. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, I want to wait till you see the house, and then I'll tell you. And I go, okay. So somehow he gets the key back out there. I drive back out there. And he says to me, call me once you get inside. Okay. So I go open the door, it's vacant. I go walk through the house. I get into the one bedroom and the carpet is cut out in
Hmm.
like a section, maybe
Like
like
this?
from here to
Like
here. Yeah, yeah, not quite like this, but it's cut out. And so I was like, well, that's kind of weird. I wonder why the carpet's cut out there. But so I called him up and he goes, has the neighbor come over and talked to you yet? And I said, no, why do you keep asking me if the neighbor came over? Like, that's kind of weird. And he said, well, are you in the room where the carpet was cut out? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, it was a murder suicide. The parents, the dad, I think it was the dad, shot the mom and then killed himself. And so the reason it's cut out is because that's where it happened. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, so I just wanted you to know that's like what happened. I said, okay, great. So we put the home on the market. People come through. I finally,
Okay, great.
I know. I know, I'm like, whatever. Yeah, it's still business for me. I'm like, whatever. So I
And he
go,
was just the attorney.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, we put it on the market, we get an offer, and then I get a phone call one day from the buyer's agent who says, did anyone die in that property?
He says,
And
"Yeah,
I
they
was
did."
like, you've been talking to the neighbor, huh? He goes, yep. Neighbor came over and talked to us. And I said, yeah, they did. And he said, I don't remember if it's he or she, the agent just said, I just was curious if you would tell me the truth if I asked. And I said, well, yeah, I don't have to disclose unless asked, but if asked, you do have to
Yeah.
disclose. So that one was kind of
Did they buy it?
they did, yeah, closed it, bought
So
it.
just on that note, I sold a home to, and I'll keep it short. Sold a home to an older couple, great. 6 months later, he called me, Brenda, I am so upset. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what, that someone died in our dining room. I said, they did? He goes, you didn't know? I said, I had no idea. He goes, well, the neighbor down the street came and told me, and it was a big fiasco. He was really upset though. I said, I didn't know. The same thing with Matt.
Yeah.
If a house has been cleaned and you know it's been cleaned, and now your buyer's buying it, I can walk into a home and know it's been cleaned by Matt almost now, automatically.
How do you
And
know?
if I feel like it has been, it's like, do I need to disclose it? No, but it might come up. But if your buyer thinks it has or wants to know, and you ask the seller's agent, has this been cleaned by meth? You do have to disclose
Yeah,
that.
you can't
you-
lie.
Don't have to tell them that it was cleaned by meth. Because once it's been cleaned, it's off the records.
Yeah.
But on seller's disclosures, does a seller have to say it's been cleaned? That's the other question. I don't know if they do or not.
I don't remember how it's worded, but
They changed that.
yeah, I can't remember. I have to look at the wording on it, but I would just say you don't have to disclose, but you also can't lie.
If
So you
that's-
you don't have to say somebody died or a murder or suicide or whatever, but
Well,
if
I
they
can look
ask,
around
you
at
can.
A lot of houses and tell
I
you.
was gonna- I bet you
I
can.
bet you can. Pick them up.
He's like, I picked up a dead person at this house.
Well, if it's natural causes.
Yeah, that's not gonna help
Right.
me, cause now my client's ready, you know, somebody's died here.
Yep.
They may have, but I've only.
The good news is, yeah, they don't ask very often. Yeah.
Does anyone ever ask that?
So-
But
I'd prefer not to know.
Quick question, isn't that different somebody that dies from natural causes or a
Doesn't matter.
disease than a suicide and things
You
like
gotta
that?
worry about the ghosts after,
what?
the ghosts.
Well, that is a cultural.
I,
It's just-
I really believe I bought a house. I felt spirits. Only in one house that I've ever lived in, I felt them.
Mhm.
And I'm not that person, but it's just like always, I should have asked.
You should have asked.
You should have
You
asked.
should have asked.
Okay. All right, so I don't know how we got off onto that, but
Crystallization. It's because
So-
she was afraid and.
Oh, that's
fearing
right.
death.
So the disclosures then, let's say the death or meth. They don't have to be disclosed unless asked, the
Correct.
death or meth,
If it's been
Clean.
cleaned.
if it's been cleaned.
yeah, as long as as long as it's been cleaned and removed, the county said, yes, you're good. You don't have to disclose, but but if somebody asked, you can't lie either, so.
And like she said, in the seller's disclosure, do they?
Yeah,
have
I
to say-
don't think,
I'm gonna have to check
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
out.
say, we'll have
There's
to
a whole
look, 'cause-
section on meth.
yeah, but
I'm just curious now.
I
It
can't
does-
remember how it's worded either, but all right. Okay, so here's the point. Talk about the benefits, not the features. It's because it's the benefit they're buying. And they can find the features, or they can find the benefit in multiple features. So let me give you a quick example of this. Somebody says they want to buy a home with a 3-car garage. Then they end up going and buying a home that has a 2-car garage, but it has a shed in the back. Did that meet their needs? Yes. And so sometimes just the fact that they show up saying, I only will buy a home with a 3-car garage, but maybe they haven't considered that they could have a shed to take part of what it is. So part of what I guess I'm saying is when people give us features, so we'll say, oh, I guess it should be garage, not. That they said they wanted a garage. Well, we have to then ask additional questions about the garage to figure out what the benefit is. Once we know what the benefit is, we can now deal with, are there other ways to meet that need with potentially other features? Okay. All right. So now with that, any questions before I go to the next piece? We good? Okay. So the next piece of this is, and this is how we go about doing it. So what we're going to do is something that I call directives. Okay. And a directive is exactly that. Think of it as this way. The way that your brain works is like a computer. Given certain instructions, it'll respond a certain way. So we're going to talk to them in terms of these directives. So typically what we are going to do is start with, and we want to ask questions that are something like this. The one that I like the best is describe for me. So I will usually say, describe for me your ideal home. Now, when I first learned this, which was 1999, I think it was, when I first started doing this, I actually said it as describe for me your perfect home. I've now switched it to where I would say, describe for me your ideal home. And I think, well, describe for me your perfect home actually works just fine as well, just so you know. But I actually have switched it to describe for me your ideal home, mostly because when I train this to people, they get caught up in, well, if they describe their perfect home, they either can't afford it or they won't get it or whatever. So if you say it as describe for me your ideal home, the idea of that would be to having them describe it, basically what the ideal scenario would be. The other things that where directives come from would be share with me. Or you could say, tell me about. Or help me understand. All of those are gonna be directives, okay? So if I said, share with me, tell me about, help me understand. But for me, I always like to start with, describe for me your ideal home. They're then gonna start to talk about it. Now, typically, the way that you and I have been trained to communicate actually blocks crystallization from occurring. So the way you and I have been trained to communicate blocks crystallization. And keep in mind, nobody's gonna buy until they crystallize. So until you create that crystallization, they're not gonna buy. So your job is to create crystallization, but the problem is you and I, the way we've been trained to communicate actually blocks it from happening. And the reason is because typically when we communicate, we give people options. We either ask closed-ended questions or we ask questions that are then option-oriented. So meaning, like I might say to Luz, do you want a 2-car or a 3-car garage? See, now what if she didn't really care if she had a garage at all? But if I said to her, do you want a 2 or a 3-car garage? She's gonna typically respond with, well, a 2-car would be great. But, or maybe she says a 3-car garage would be great. Whatever she says, but what if really that's not one of her driving factors? Because that's the other thing that I want you to understand. So keep in mind, features have benefits. Benefits satisfy a need. So that's kind of the whole point of this. Features provide a benefit. The benefit satisfies a need. People buy in 2s and 3s of the benefits or needs. So think of it that way. When people show up and tell you what they're looking for in a home, they're usually going to give you a laundry list of here's all the stuff that I want. But ultimately know that at the end of the day, what they're looking for is to meet 2 or 3 of their key needs. They have 2 or 3 key needs they're looking for in a home. And if you find a property that has 1 or 2, but they need 3, they won't buy. But as soon as you find one that meets all 3 needs. So here's the whole point of this. When you are working with like a husband and a wife and she wants to write an offer and he doesn't, the reason typically, if he's on board with buying, is because, or vice versa, that could be the other way too. He wants it, she doesn't want it. The reason the one doesn't want it is because it doesn't meet their 2 or 3 key needs. So when you're working with a couple, you need to find out the 2 or 3 key needs for all of them. But the way we do that is we start with, describe for me your ideal home. They're then going to start to describe it and you're going to say, what else? Keep going. So the other part of directives is what I call prompters. Prompters are going to be, what else? Keep going. Say more. Stuff like that, okay? So what you're gonna do is I would be saying, okay, describe for me your ideal home. So if I said, Jordan, describe for me your ideal home, he's gonna now start to typically tell me about the features. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, and usually they're gonna give you the bullet point things because again, the way you and I have been trained to communicate is up here. So he's typically going to give me the features, 3 beds, 2 baths, 2-car garage, nice neighborhood, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then what I'm going to do is say, okay, Jordan, you're doing a really good job. Tell me more. Or Jordan, you're doing a really good job. Keep going. You're doing great. Say more. What else? What else on there? Go ahead.
So I'm working with one right now that's like kind of the opposite. Like they're in a situation where they're like, we don't have to move, but if we found a home in Holiday that was in a cul-de-sac and not on a hill, then we'd be interested.
Okay.
So I was asking, what about beds and baths? Well, it's not as big of a deal, but the yard doesn't have to be great. We can fix that up. Like, it was just kind of like.
So here's the question for you that I don't anticipate you know the answer, but maybe you do. what is it about that that is so important?
Well, they do want to be in Holiday because that's where both their families live and they're in Traverse.
Okay.
And they go down every week.
Okay,
So the drive's annoying.
okay,
They want it in a cul-de-sac because they have kids. And they live on a hill right now and she hates it. She's like, I want my kids to be able to run out in the front yard and play with their toys, ride their bikes and not worry about hills and cars.
Okay.
So that, but everything else was secondary, like even the amount of bedrooms, which is weird when you have kids. Usually you're like, well, we need at least this, but she was just like, yeah, this is kind of what we're looking at.
okay. So, what was the other, you said Holiday cul-de-sac, wasn't there?
No
three
hill.
things? And what, oh, no hill,
No.
okay. Okay,
And then she said between 800 and 900,000.
Like I can find that.
yeah.
I've sent her a bunch. But here's the tricky part is because they're not like, yeah, I'm ready to sign an agreement and we're ready to put our house up for sale. It's like, if that situation come up, we'd look seriously at it, because a house popped up that they found just digging around on Zillow and they almost went to go see it. But the husband's like, we don't have an agent right now. And she's like, who cares? Let's try to go see it. And the next day it was under contract. So they were bummed. So that's where I actually knocked into him and I was
But
like,
see, that's a good opportunity to say that could happen again and we won't be ready. Let's get your house ready. Let's get the photos. Let's have it in our back pocket, ready to pull the trigger to list your house. We'll keep looking. And the minute you find something, we'll be ready to list yours the very day. Something like that.
that's true.
I mean, because otherwise they're gonna be in the same situation. It'll happen again.
I tried to close like at the door, I tried to close like 5 times, like that's why I should come over. And the most I could get out of him was. We will talk on the phone next week and I'll share with you what we would be looking at. And so I was like, okay, that's true.
That was last week.
That was, yeah. So, and they're on vacation this week, but I've sent them like 8 homes right now. I haven't heard.
You have
anything
them on
back.
an auto hot sheet.
No, not yet. That's the thing is I kept like pitching all this stuff and the
They're like, I'm
husband's
not ready
like,
for that.
well, I mean, we're good where we're at. She's like, yeah, but we also, if we found something, we'd move, right? He's like, I guess. And so it was just like, there was just this so much give
Yeah,
and
but
take. at
maybe
the
not
door.
quite ready, but hey, but now you have an agent.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
that was the problem you had before.
The part I love the best is they're like, yeah, but we don't have an agent. I'm like,
Here's one.
I knocked on your door. It's 105 degrees outside.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna work with me, right? Like, I'm taking this serious.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of funny. They went like right for the benefits.
That is interesting and that's why I was kind of asking is, and you'll notice that it typically is gonna fall into 2 or 3 things that are the key needs. And the key thing you want to find out, which it sounds like you did, but is why? Why do you want the cul-de-sac? Why no hill? Why Holiday?
They want to be by family. They want safety for kids is big. So
Yeah, which ultimately I would say that the safety around kids is really peace of mind for them. It is safety for the kids, but it gives them, for them personally, the benefit they're looking for is peace of mind. So, and I'll give you guys, we'll talk about on, Thursday, so we're gonna do part 2 of this class will be next Thursday. So initially it's on the schedule right there on the wall for next Tuesday, but it's actually gonna be next Thursday. So I drew an arrow changing those. So anyway, so no class next Tuesday, but next Thursday we'll do this. But I'll give you, there's actually 15 key needs that's been organic. But I feel like we're at 15 key needs. I almost feel like it needs to be pared back to 14 and safety, I think, for me, what I've found is the safety as a key need really ends up being security or peace of mind for the person. So I don't feel like it really is the actual safety is one as much as it's the peace of mind that safety gives you. But anyway, well, we'll go through the 15 key needs next week. So before that, though, I want to make sure we get through this because here's what I've found. Most people sitting down with a buyer or seller don't ask enough questions. They may say, describe for me your ideal home. But then what tends to happen is that we cut the people off. We don't get as much information out of them. And remember, what we're trying to do is cause crystallization. We're trying to create this crystallization to occur, which is the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings reintegrating. So the good news with what you're talking about, Jordan, was it sounds like those people probably have crystallized on it. The only thing from what you've said that makes me a little iffy on if they have or not, it actually, let me rephrase it. It sounds like she has crystallized and he hasn't. Because I think if he had, he would be like, yeah, let's go.
Yep.
Versus.
He
sounds
was like,
she
I don't wanna waste your time, and this, and that, like, we got a 3% interest rate, you know. And she was more like, you could tell she was almost like, I'm the one at home with the kids all day,
Exactly,
like, here's what I need.
yeah,
She's gonna win.
yeah.
They usually
Yes.
do.
She will, but I would also say, so part of what I would recommend for you to do is see if you could set up a time that you could take them through this process, and specifically him. I think she's already crystallized, so I'm less worried about her. But for him, if you could go through, describe for me the ideal home. Now, here's the key thing. So when you say, describe for me the ideal home, you then need to be quiet and let them talk. And let them talk and let them talk. Once they're done talking, then you're gonna say, that's great, what else? Tell me more, keep going. And until, we wanna keep doing that until they say, that's about it, or I can't think of anything else, I don't know what else to tell you. When they say something like that is when you can know, okay, I'm done with number one. So here's how I think about this, is I usually will refer to this as tool number one. In this, and the idea of this, describe for me your ideal home, is to access the pictures part of the brain. So we're getting them to picture it by saying, describe for me your ideal home. And usually they're gonna start very surface level, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. But the moment that you say, okay, 3 bed, 2 bath, 2-car garage, what else? All of a sudden now you're forcing them to have to stop and think. They're gonna go to the part of the brain where they have the pictures and the decisions stored to be able to start to tell you, okay, well, we want to have a yard and we need to have a garden and we want a family room, and the family room needs to, and whatever it is they say, you're gonna be taking some notes. And I'll give you on next Thursday a paper that you can use for keeping notes that has kind of a cheat sheet on this as well. But you're gonna say, describe for me your ideal home, what else, keep going. They're gonna tell you more, what else, keep going, what else, you're doing great. And I always do like to give them positive reinforcement, so while they're talking, I'm gonna be, bobbing my head, yep, like get what you're saying, yep. But then I'm also gonna say, hey, you're doing a really good job, I'm getting a really good picture, what else do I need to know? And then they're gonna talk some more, and you're gonna go, okay, sure, oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, makes sense, oh, interesting, okay, sure, what else? And you're gonna keep doing that until they say, that's about it, or I don't know what else to tell you. If we found that, we would be happy as could be. When they say something like that is when you can know, okay, I'm done with this tool. That makes sense? All right. Should we practice it?
So when I go through that process, if they don't say anything about the yard or garage, I will say things like, is a garage important to you? And if they say, oh yeah, we gotta have a 2-car garage. Well, what if it only had a 1-car garage? And they're like, oh yeah, we could live with a 1-car garage. What if there is no garage? Because when you're setting up listing alerts, you may go in there and find no houses that meet their criteria with 2-car garage. Do you want to send them homes with 1-car garage? No, not unless they say, we could live with a 1-car garage, because you know what, when you do that, you're the bad guy, you didn't listen.
Yeah, then all of a sudden,
Then
why,
it's all of a sudden,
yep.
they're sending me 1-car. No, things like that, or we don't want a big yard. We do not want a big yard. What is a big yard to you?
So that's a good question. That one is one you always have to ask, because again, if you don't ask, they will then relate to if you don't ask what it means to them, you'll relate to what it means to you. And then you go out and they're like, these are not big garages. So I had one where the lady said, I want to have a big kitchen. And I said, okay, so when you say big kitchen, tell me what big kitchen means. Now, which, by the way, don't do that during this section. So during this piece of it, just like star it or something, and then you'll know to come back to ask more questions on it, because that's gonna be part of tool number 2. But just know, during this piece, we're just gathering.
Yeah.
Just gather. But yeah, I said, you know, what's a big kitchen? Tell me what a big kitchen means to you. I know what it means to me. What does it mean to you?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I don't know dimensions, so I wouldn't know what to tell you. And I said, okay, well, just in relation to this room. Because like to me, this would be a big kitchen.
This
And
would be a huge big.
yeah, but so if somebody says big kitchen, this is what I think of. But I said, so give me in relation to this room. Now, we were in a conference room that was much smaller, but she said, as long as the kitchen could be like that.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, okay. And she said, well, yeah, here's why. Is she said, where we live right now, it is so narrow that one person can't be doing the dishes while another person is cooking. And a big kitchen to me would be one person could do the dishes while somebody else is cooking. And so to her, it was like, if as long as it's even like this, that like I was shocked because I thought she's like, you know, half the size of the room or something.
Need room for 12 on a table.
Yep, nope. She was like, a big kitchen would be one person can cook and one can clean, do dishes at the same time. As long as you can do that, that's a big kitchen. Okay, great. Otherwise, I would be out looking for these humongous kitchens that they couldn't afford or whatever. Okay, all right.
So right
Yes.
now, Rose, in the kind of market that we have, is it wrong to go more by the price than everything else?
It's a combination.
Yeah, it's a combination. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, the answer to your question is nobody is gonna buy anything that doesn't meet their needs. If the property does not meet their 2 or 3 needs, they're not gonna buy it. I don't care what the market is. Now, with that being said, though, price is gonna play into that as well, but here's the good news. Features, a feature of, I don't know what. It doesn't matter, but features here's probably the way to say it. Features have a price tag. Benefits don't. A benefit, you can find the benefit in any price range. So you don't have to worry about. If it doesn't have the benefit, they won't buy it. It doesn't matter the price. If it meets their needs, they will do it.
If you have
So
6 kids and you're each just showing you 2-bedroom houses,
Not gonna work.
doesn't matter if it costs them 80 grand, they're not gonna buy it.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
If
those
that,
don't meet their needs.
That's just it, because it's not meeting the needs. Now, the good news is, though, is you can meet the need. You can find a feature that will meet the need in any price range. So, for example, somebody that says, I want a home with a pool. And, you know, maybe they want a pool and and it's like, and I've got $300,000 to spend. How could you find them? How could you meet that need? Still,
Go into a
Home
condo.
or condo.
yeah, it could be a condo, it could be,
Condo, there's your pool.
I was gonna say dig a hole and fill it up.
it could be.
$200.
It could be that you sell them a home in a neighborhood that has the community pool right next door, like, that's the idea, or a mobile home park that has a pool in the park, like, you can meet. The features exist. The benefit, you can meet the benefit in any price range, so I don't know if that answered the question you had on it.
And you know, if you're looking at $400,000 homes and that's all they qualify,
Mhm.
I'm straight up and honest, we're gonna have very limited options. I'm going to pull up on the MLS exactly how many, while I'm on the phone with them, if I'm on the phone with them, I'm like, you have 5 options right now with all of that. Now, if I take the 2-car garage out, now you have 13 options. What do you think?
Yep.
Oh, send us the 13.
Yeah.
We could live without a garage.
Yeah, and again, as long as keep in mind, when we do this, the directive, so I drew this up here on the board. Essentially, what you want to do, when you say describe for me your ideal home, you're gonna now take notes on, so you could, I'm gonna give you a grid that has this, but you could just grab a blank piece of paper and draw this, and you're good. As they're talking, every feature that they talk about, keep notes on it in 1 or 2 boxes. Like if they give you a ton, you can spill over into this box, it's fine. But every feature that they start to talk about, I'm gonna write it in here. And then when they start talking about another feature, I'll do it in here. Another feature, I'm gonna just keep notes in here. The idea is I'm gonna get as much information out of them as I can. I'm gonna fill in as many boxes of these on as many features as I can get. And part of that is I want them to know that I'm listening and I hear. Once we've done that, now remember, in fact, I'll test you. How do I know when I'm done filling the grid?
When they quit talking.
Yeah, when they say, I don't know what else to tell you, that I've told you everything there is to know. Once they've done that, I can know I'm done with this, okay? Now, before I move on to tool number 2, which we're gonna save that for next time, but before we do that, I'm gonna take a look at this and I wanna see just like, do I have a bunch of information on all of these boxes? Because if I have a couple of boxes that just don't have very much information in it, then I'm gonna probably wanna go back and go, okay. And let's say that maybe this was the basement, okay? And all they said was a couple of things about the basement. Before I move on, I'm gonna say, okay, real quick, you mentioned the basement, tell me more about the basement. And then whatever they tell me, then I can keep more notes on it. Then I may look over here and say, you mentioned the backyard. Tell me more about the backyard. And I'm just gonna get a ton of information. Or I might say, you mentioned the backyard, tell me more about it. And they might say, I really probably never gonna go out there. It just would be nice to have some grass or something, whatever. I don't, whatever. They may not, if they don't give me a whole bunch of information, that's okay. But I'm gonna at least give them the opportunity to, because again, think of it as I'm just trying to get as much information as I can. Once I've done that, the next thing I'm gonna do before I go on to tool number 2 is I'm then gonna have them rank these. Now, so because remember, we're looking for 2 or 3. So now that I've gotten all the information, I'm gonna say, so Jordan, of everything you've talked about, I've got a really good picture of what you're looking for in a home. But what are the 2 or 3 things that are the most important?
The amount of bedrooms.
And then, so he's, okay, so let's say this was beds, okay, bedrooms,
And
just make stuff up, it doesn't matter.
a Rambler.
Oh, okay. So Rambler. Okay. So now notice, I said, give me the 2 or 3, he just gave me 2. So that's fine. That's why you want to say it as, of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3? See, remember how I said we approach things to block crystallization, the way we usually communicate. Typically, we would say, all right, of all these things, which one's the most important? And then what's the second? And then what's the third? And then we would go on from there. But by me saying it is, give me the 2 or 3, because remember, they buy in 2s and 3s. What he would have just told me is there's only 2 things, there's only 2 key things that he has to have in this property. Now, granted, some of this other stuff's important and it's gonna play into it. But what I'm telling you, if we find a property that doesn't meet these needs. So like if he's saying Rambler, if I went and found a 2-story, and I might even ask him, if I found a 2-story that met everything on here, would you consider it?
No.
See, then now I know. See, it's just asking those additional questions to figure out, which is what Brandon Lee was talking about as far as saying, hey, you wanted a 2-car garage, but if we open it, there's only 5, but if we open it up to 1 car, now there's 13. If they say absolutely not, then now you know. It's not, we're not gonna be able to adjust. But if I said, well, it opens it up to 13, and they go, well, we could probably be okay with it. Okay, well, now I know. So keep in mind, we want to get 2 or 3 items. And then from there is where now we're going to go in and we'll start to ask additional questions. So, all right.
Even like on location, they always say location, location, location. You've got a general area, but I will ask them, what about a busier street? Do you have a problem with busier streets? And either they'll say, oh, no, absolutely, that's fine, or absolutely not. So when I'm looking at homes or they pick one and I see it's right on a busy street, that's right on 7th East. Do you really want to see that? If they haven't talked about the location so much and they pick a home to go look at and it's on a busy street, I just bring it up. Would I buy a home on a busy street? Probably not. And that's why I probably bring it up.
I was just going to say, that's why you bring it
Because
up.
people get on the busy streets and they're like, why didn't you tell us this street was so busy? So I bring it up.
See, and
They're like-
I look at that and go, you should be able to look right there and know that's a busy road.
That's why you wanna show it at 8 at night.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then they're like, I just had someone by on 2700 South. And they're like, how busy is this street? I said, well, here we are at 5 o'clock. This is gonna give us a good indication, but you should come back here.
Exactly.
And look at it at different times. You could even talk to the neighbors. But does a busy street bother you? No, not really. They have dogs and they have kids. And those are things that they don't think about. They get tied up on the house and think this is fabulous. We'll live with that busy street. A year later, they're like, get us off this busy street.
See, that's why I don't bring it up.
Then you have another transaction,
No, because I
another 2 transactions, right?
just love this busy street. I'm like, it doesn't bother you. Okay, just think, because they get tied up in the house.
Yeah.
So I want them to be happy long term. But would I buy in a busy street? Probably not.
I was gonna say,
Not
that's
today.
usually my answer, my question is I usually say, if you're bringing it up to them to consider. I usually say, you need to stop and think about, is that because you?
Yeah.
And that, which is why I say, is it okay to let them buy the house they want? And,
Absolutely.
and,
There's houses where I'm like, they don't buy this house, I'm going to.
yeah,
And then when they're like, no, that's not our house, I'm just like, are you kidding? But when I was inactive in real estate, I had an agent that was helping me. I didn't reactivate my license and I bought 2 homes with other agents. And they were pushy. This is the house. I'm like, this is not the house I'm going to buy.
yeah,
Finally, I just started looking on my own and found the house. I'm like, okay, I found the house I want to buy. And I'm like, I will never use you again.
yeah.
You were a horrible agent, pushing me and telling me I'm supposed to buy that. So I've never ever done that to anyone. Yeah, but yeah, I'm like, I will never use you again. You're pushy.
And who were they?
And you're not even selling anymore.
That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
All right. Any other questions?
That's right,
You forgot.
that's right.
It was good.
All right, so what we'll do then, so next Thursday, so no class next Tuesday, but next Thursday, I'll do a quick refresher of some of this stuff. And then we're gonna jump into actually going into, okay, the next piece is what we call modifiers. So I'll go through and we'll talk about the modifiers and then I'll give you the 15 benefit words and I think the modifiers piece is the hardest part of this, so I think we'll do a quick practice one next week on the 2, so anyway.
Okay.
Cool, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Good. Good reminders.
Yeah,
So Tuesday, there's no class. on
no
Tuesday.
class Tuesdays, because I'm gonna be out of town, so.
Okay.
Otherwise,
¿Qué bien doing? ¿Cómo estás?
bien, cansado.
¿Verdad que sí?
Sí.
Es que es tarde y es calor que. Por eso.
Ya, pero bien, todo bien. ¿Y usted cómo le va?
Pues mira,
Hola,
voy a
Héctor.
empezar